This is my spoilery discussion of Wicked Saints by Emily Duncan, and let's just get into it. If you want to know things about, like, what the plot of this book is about, how I generally feel about it, that kind of thing, there's a spoiler-free review that has that information. I'm just gonna jump in, because I don't want to say everything again. Great. Notes. I took, like, 1,000-ish words of notes here, so that kind of thing. I talked about a lot of what I liked in the spoiler-free review, the characters, the world building. I thought a lot of it was really good. And really engaging and really awesome, but also there are some holes there. There are some things that we don't know that I kind of wanted to be fleshed out. So this is not, I don't know. I don't want this to seem like I'm being super overly critical of this, because I did like things about this book. I did give it 3 whole stars, but at the same time, I have some issues, and I have some questions. And I think some of these are probably going to be answered in later books, so keep in mind also, I don't hate this. I'm just being a little critical of it, because there are things that I don't know yet that I want to. So, one of the things that I don't necessarily jive with is, like, the history that we kind of get. And, like, I understand that they're from different sides of the war, and they're gonna have different perspectives on the way the war goes, they're gonna have been raised under different propaganda machines, all of that kind of thing, whatever. I understand that, great. Who started the war? Apparently it's been going on for 100 years, and it's been basically at this stalemate, the war's going on, nobody's won, they've just been constantly fighting for, like, 100 years, and they both have, like, at this point, definitely both sides have perpetuated atrocities against the other and deserve some of this want for revenge. But there's this, like, is it a holy war about heresy and the gods? Is it a war over land? Is it, like, did the, what was the name of the city? It starts with a K. The city that the country with the winter and the clerics, did they aggress because these other people were heretics? Did the heretics aggress because, heretical, like, because they wanted land or something? I don't know. Apparently, they don't fight the war on the soil of the blood magic country, because the blood magic country is covered in bogs and swamps. So all of the war is fought on the soil of the winter country. But the people in the winter country are kind of supposedly the aggressors in this situation? Like, the history of this war is very unclear. And I really don't understand how it works. And, like, I understand that in a war, especially, like, things aren't always super clear, and it can be super nuanced, and, like, who's the aggressor and who, like, nobody's a black hat bad guy, necessarily, and that's fine. That's a fine concept. But I don't understand how it happened, and this book, it tries really hard not to paint the blood magic country as the straight up bad guys, but it kind of doesn't do a very good job of that, I don't think. I think it very much paints them as, like, the bad guys in a lot of ways, and then tries to add some nuance by saying, well, yeah, but the other side think we're heretics and would kill us, or have been violent to us as well, and, like, but you're invading their country, right? Would they invade back? Who started this? It's not clear. I think that's something I would want to, I don't know, I want to know more specifics about that, because the way it's presented, I don't understand. Also in the book, in terms of the writing, the timeline is really weird. There are points when it seems like, so there's 2 perspectives, Nadia and Seraphine, and Nadia is the cleric and Seraphine is the blood mage prince, and the book starts and they're both at the same time because they're both at the battle at the monastery. And then the timeline kind of splits. Nadia goes one way, Seraphim thinks about chasing her and then gets called home, so he goes the other way, and he travels all the way back to his country. We don't know how far this is. And Nadia is still in the mountains, in whatever her country is, the cleric country. So, the next chapter we see with Seraphim, he's at home. But the next chapter we see with Nadia, she's still in the mountains. And so, like, how long does it take to travel places is very unclear. And because of that, it seems like potentially weeks have passed for Seraphim, while it's been a day for Nadia. And so that timeline doesn't make sense, to me anyway. There's all of this stuff where it's like, yeah, only a day has passed for Nadia, and then back in the other thing, we go back to Seraphim, and he's talking to his dad, and his dad's like, I'm very disappointed, and you're super late for this. And Seraphim is kind of like, well, we went as fast as we can, and, like, we were all the way in the mountains, so... And it's just kind of like, but, like, how long did it take, though? If it only took, like, a day, if you guys are still, you know, if we're still following the correct timeline, and there's nothing in it to indicate that we're not following the correct timeline, except these vague, like, conversations that don't have any detail. So that got really confusing for me in, like, the beginning half of the book, where I was like, okay, but what's the timing on it all? Where does it fall on the timeline of the plot? I also had some things with, like, the ending. It felt like it was prioritizing action in the plot over explaining what was going on and what happened and things like that. It felt like things started moving really, really fast, and the audience got a lot of information, but the characters didn't have a lot of information, so we kind of know more things that are going on than the characters do, but the characters don't know everything that's going on, and it all got really muddled, and it got really confusing, and you don't really know what happened. And some parts of this I'm okay with. Like, I'm okay with not knowing exactly what happened to Seraphim and why his magical powers got like that. Like, and what happened there. I'm okay not knowing all the answers to that, because there's no way that the party would have known. But I find it difficult for, like, the betrayal, right, where the Black Vulture betrays them. I kept wanting it to be, I didn't feel like that was foreshadowed well at all. I didn't, like, he as, like, an actual villain character came a little out of nowhere for me. I didn't think he was a good guy, necessarily, but him being, like, the end-all, be-all, ultimate villain kind of doesn't make sense based on what we kind of learned about him in the earlier parts of the story. We don't know what he wants, and, like, when he... Okay, so in the book, he, like, talks about how he's going to... They make a plan when they're with the witch. They make a plan, and the plan is, like, he's going to convince the king to go through with the evil plan anyway, and that's the plan. Like, he's gonna lie to the king and pretend that he's on the king's side. So then in the scene at the end where he's talking like he's on the king's side and everybody's like, oh no, he's betrayed us. I was like, wait, but wasn't that the plan? Or is this some different spot in the plan? Or, like, was the king not supposed to be in this room at all? Why were they expecting him to be here? What was, I didn't know what was going on there. I didn't understand how the characters knew that he was betraying them, because the plan was that they were going to pretend to be on the king's side until the point when they weren't. And so I didn't get it. I didn't get how that, like, all went down. And that was very confusing. I'm just following along on my notes. Don't mind me looking over here. I wanted more fallout from the revelation that Nadia's the cleric. Like, the only cleric, and that she's in the middle of enemy territory, like, had dinner sitting next to the crown prince. That apparently was not a big deal, like, that wasn't a big deal in the story, but, like, that's a pretty big deal politically and militarily. Like, apparently, that's a big deal. Oh, there was this thing with Nadia's relationship with her gods that I I wanted more from. Like, we saw a lot of Nadia's relationship with the gods in a lot of different ways throughout the book, and I wanted a little bit more depth to some of that, because it started with Nadia. Her patroness is the goddess of death, and she pays a lot of, there's a lot in the writing about how she's never gone against an order, but also she was raised in a monastery, away from all the fighting, so she wouldn't have had to go against an order, you know? So, like the point of her arc is a little bit to show the deterioration of her piety, but that means at the beginning we have to see her getting commands from the gods and then following through on them, and we only really get that once when her emotions were also in line with what the gods wanted her to do. There's never a moment where she has doubts, but she does what the gods want anyway, and then that turns out to be maybe the wrong choice for her, or something that causes more fallout than she wanted. Like, and there's really nothing that causes the doubts except for, like, the gods tell her to do something, she's like, but I don't want to. And so, like, I wanted it to be more complicated in her losing her piousness and her faith in the gods, because then when she, because if we see that being more complicated on the way in, then when she finally gets to the point where she has that moment of realizing her power actually comes from herself and not from the gods through her, that would be so much more impactful. And the visions about the gods being these kind of weird, or like these scary eldritch horror beings instead of like divine light beings, it would be more impactful. And it would, you know, if those doubts were from something more than like, but I don't want to do this. Like, her patron is the goddess of death, but she doesn't want to kill things. And maybe that is something that needed to be explored more. Like, she doesn't want to cause death, but her patron is literally the goddess of death, so she has to. But she hasn't before. So, like, this whole concept that she's never not done what her patron said, well, have her patron, like, commanded her to do things before? We don't know. We didn't get to see it. Like, the battle that happens at the beginning of the book is apparently the first battle that's made it that far into the country. So, like, she grew up in relative peace in a monastery away from everybody. So what could her gods have in reality asked her to do that she would have done anyway out of a sense of duty? Like, that kind of thing I wanted to be more complicated. The other thing, we don't know anything about the cleric's country. We spend almost no time there, and the time we do spend there, we don't see any citizens of that country. After we leave the monastery, we don't know, we don't meet any characters from that country. Nadia is the only character from that country, and she's, like, really special. She's got this chosen one energy that we don't know anything about the rest of that country. We don't know how their government works. We don't know how the war feels for them, or like what's going on that side of things. We know nothing about that. Literally at all. We don't know how they feel about the gods. Like, they're supposed to be this really pious country, but we don't know anything about them and how they relate to their stuff. We know that Nadia is really pious because she can actually physically speak to the gods, because she can explicitly talk to them. But the rest of the world, are these people all just faithful? We get a hint that maybe some people are losing faith, but it's not something that we get to see. We spend all of our time in the other country. And that doesn't necessarily make sense to me. And I think it could have been fixed if we fixed the timeline problems at the beginning. We're so close to the end, but I only have like 1 minute of recording left. Okay, we'll come back in just a second. Please excuse the slight angle change that is probable after I had to reset some stuff. We're almost done. We're almost done with my thoughts. I feel like, again, like I said at the beginning, a lot of these thoughts are critical and a lot of these thoughts are questions and like, why is this like this and how does this work? But like, I really liked the book. I enjoyed the reading process. I am just a really critical human because I've come out of a lot of critical analysis study and learning in my life, and things like that. So we're doing some nitpicking because I find it fun to nitpick stories and figure out how they work. I wanted some more development of some of the side characters. I think that a couple of the characters, the ones who, you know, they really just seem to fulfill plot functions in the story a little bit, and I wanted them to be a little bit more developed, a little bit more people-y. Specifically, I really wanted more about the Blood Mage noblewoman. I don't know anybody's names. I'm sorry, I haven't done the research. There's a Blood Mage noblewoman that Seraphim is convinced is going to become the next queen after this traditional queen finding ceremony thing. And she's like ruthless and cutthroat and politically savvy and cool and sassy and stuff, and like I wanted more with her. I wanted more of that character. I thought it was really fascinating the way that they played her character at the end, because she did this like switch into a betrayal, and like if they had developed her character more, that would have been potentially something that hurt more to the audience. I didn't find it super hurtful that she turned on him, because we don't know a lot about who she is. We know Seraphim trusted her, like, implicitly, but we don't really know why, other than that, like, they kind of grew up together, but, like, you know, he's paranoid and lives in this world of paranoia where his dad is trying to kill him and stuff. So, like, it doesn't, you know, we don't get to see her political power plays, and I really wanted to. I thought that would be cool. Kind of related to that, I also really wanted more from the, I don't know how to say any of these names. The Relawik, or whatever it is, the big traditional, like, wife-finding ceremony, the queen-finding ceremony thing, isn't, like, as a subplot, I wanted it to be more. It seems like this big, like, social and political event that has a lot of rules and a lot of, like, you know, things that you need to figure out and navigate through, and it kind of fell flat for me. It's this Bachelor meets Gladiator. It's this, like, sorry, my battery died. We're having lots of issues today, but it'll be fine, probably. So, it's supposed to be this, like, Bachelor meets Gladiator situation where they go through it, and at the end of it, there's, like, one girl standing who gets to be queen, or something like that. It was very unclear to me what the rules were, how it worked. We didn't get a lot from it. There was, like, one social scene, a duel, and then, like, a dinner that were these social parts of it, and that was kind of the entirety of it, and we didn't get any details about how it worked. We didn't see a lot of Nadia, like, training to navigate it, and then she made mistakes immediately that ended up putting her in a duel to the death before anyone expected anything like that to happen. And, like, it doesn't, I don't know, as a concept, it's kind of cool, but also it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, because, like, if you're gonna have, like, a big fight to the death kind of ceremony to find your next queen, you're gonna kill off a significant portion of the female nobles in your country once a generation. And, like, that's not really great for your ruling class, I don't think. Just in terms of, like, numbers. Unless it's only supposed to be, like, only some of them die and some of them just get sent home, but that's not explained. It's just, it's kind of deadly. And so, like, we don't get a lot from that, and I really wanted to, like, you know, Seraphim doesn't want to go through the motions, but he has to politically, and, like, I wanted to see more of that. More, instead of him just being, like, paranoid about it, I wanted to see him going through those motions. And I wanted that to be a lot more fleshed out, and for that to be a thing. I wanted this book to be longer, is really what it is. I think the pacing and the plot is too squished in a lot of places, because I think the travel needed to take a longer time. I think we needed to spend some time in the cleric country. I think we needed to spend more time on the ceremony of the Ralawik, and I think the end needed more explanation. So I think the book itself just needed more. So I'm hoping we get that more in the second one. I am running out of time again, so we're gonna end it here. I hope you had a good time, and I will see you in the future. Bye.